What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? I can't find it anywhere, but does anyone remember something where there was a girl by herself at home? She was talking to her friend on the phone while laying on her bed. She then dropped her phone, and when she was picking it up, she saw a reflection of a face underneath the bed. She proceeded to talk to her friend and calmly say she was going to have a shower, and hung up the call. She ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and jumped out of the window. She called the cops. Later they arrived and arrested a man who was standing right outside that door holding a knife. This really freaks me out to this day. There was an article on it too. I can't for the life of me find his post, and I don't remember the parent thread, but I really hope someone answers me and knows what I'm talking about. Basically, a redditor was answering a thread a lot like this one. Like, what's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you, etc. He wrote about a time where he was in Africa on some humanitarian trip, and it was nighttime and they were standing around their jeep in some remote village. All of a sudden, their guide, an older South African guy, says, "Get in the car." They're like, "What?" And he says, "Get in the car now." So they all jump in the jeep. Seconds later, a naked bloody African woman comes tearing out of the underbrush and slams into the jeep, starts banging on the windows like she wants to kill them. The guide floors it in reverse, and they get out of there, watching the woman creepily fade in the dusty red light behind them. Hesh mentions that they told the local cops about it, and apparently they went to check it out, but they never heard anything about it again. Super creepy. A while back there was this guy that posted his confession on Reddit. Basically, he said that he was on the run. He had killed his girlfriend and knew there was no way the cops would ever believe his side of the story and wanted to make sure it was told. He told his story of how he loved his girlfriend, how devastated he was when they broke up, and how they'd nearly gotten back together, but she'd flown into a fit of jealousy after learning he dated other people. I think it's been a while since I read it and attacked him. One thing led to another, and she was dead, and he was on the run. What pissed me off was all the people that were commenting saying they felt sorry for him, that it wasn't his fault, and it was just a tragedy. But if you read his post carefully, you could tell a lot of things didn't add up. He was shifting the blame and making himself look better by throwing dirt on the girl he murdered. He mentioned he'd gotten into a fight with her friend's boyfriend, but didn't mention they fought him because he was breaking and entering. He said he shoved her and she hit her head and was yelling at him to get out, but before he left he wanted a hug and she attacked him because of it. He said that her friends would back him up as long as they were honest. Too many things didn't add up and anyone using critical thinking could realize it, but too many fell into his trap and thought he was the innocent guy that was having the shiftiest luck. His name is Aja Hassan. Look him up. Read his post, and then read what the authorities discovered about the crime, and you'll get a first-hand look at how abusers shift blame, and why you should always be skeptical. Also, I'm pretty sure he stabbed her 37 times. I don't remember the exact number, but it was a ridiculous amount of times. Here's a link imga, comment 5 yognar, to his side of the story. I couldn't find it on Reddit, but I found his post either way. Enjoy. I'm on a true crime subreddit. A few years ago, a user on a new account posted some extremely graphic pictures, claiming that they had killed and were going to kill again. Reverse image search. 0 results. I forwarded it to the admins at once and advised they contact the authorities immediately. I hope they did something. Remember reading about a guy who was with his GF and her family around a bonfire. They were getting drunk, and one of her brothers says how he likes taking pop shots at hikers on the trail. They just got back from hunting and all had rifles. Then another one said how he saw a lady hiking, so he followed her, found her camp, raped her, made her write a suicide note, then he killed her. Now that's pretty ducked by itself. What makes it worse though is a commenter said how there's an unsolved death of a woman on that same trail who had a small camp, was alone and killed herself. No one found the camp for a few years, but they knew she went missing. Remember reading the article they linked and ducking hell at Siri. Probably this post I saw on one of the narcotics drug subreddits. This girl posted about being in the ER because of a life-threatening infection in her leg due to shooting up. She looked rough, head shaved, thin, sickly looking. but in true nature of this subreddit, she was almost bragging about her use. I got curious and decided to peek at her post history. Every scroll took me further and further into her past, where it became evident that 2 years earlier she was a normal appearing young girl almost the exact same age as me. To see the incredible decline was so heartbreaking, and I would have reached out if I didn't understand firsthand the futility of talking someone down from addiction. I still think of her sometimes. I believe it was a post from WatchPRPD. It was a gif from a security cam of mom and her son going up an escalator. As they were getting to the top, the escalator started coming apart and collapsing. So as this is happening, the mother throws her son to safety on the platform above, but then falls into the gears of the escalator. As she is swallowed up and crushed by the gears, her son watched disappear and die. That one ducked me up for a while. One time a few years ago, I was reading a user's comment history and I saw one comment she left in a normal subreddit, can't remember which one, talking about how she always wanted to be a mother due to her naturally nurturing and compassionate nature. A few posts down from that one, I saw another comment she left in a subreddit full of pictures of dead children, where she was lamenting the fact that the mods no longer let you post sexual comments on the pictures of dead kids. For me, it's the post from the guy who didn't hear his wife being attacked and great downstairs because his gaming headset was noise cancelling. Eventually he does hear something and goes to investigate. The grappist was still on top of her until Op shot him. I wear bone conductive headsets, usually with one pushed up a bit, so that my ears are fully exposed, so that I can still hear my wife if she ever needed me. A video of man sticking a big toe up his penis hole. Goddamn 50-50 leads to some weird shit. There are two particular stories on Let's Not Meet that were particularly frightening. One was of a woman who went out to check her mail, and when she got back in, a man was hiding under bed with a knife. I think she ended up going into the bathroom and calling the police. Another was a woman who stopped to get gas at a gas station. A group of guys eyed her up, and when she drove off, they began to follow her in their vehicle. Ultimately she drove to her brother's house, who was military, or ex-military I think, who greeted them by firing several rounds into the air when they arrived at his house. I can't find the links to either story, but they were both particularly harrowing reads. The recording of the woman calling 911 and then gets killed in the middle of the call. I took a criminal justice class in 1989 where the professor played a 911 recording of a woman whose home was broken into, I believe by an ex, and he stabbed her to death while she was still on the phone with 911. One of last things you could hear was her calling for her mother. Her mother wasn't around. That was just the last thing she wanted before she died. Her voice faded off into this pitiful little moan of mommy. I've seen a lot of crap since TH. Worked as a nurse for 17 years and had a lot of things I remember clearly, especially other deaths I've seen. But that unknown woman sticks with me as strongly as those situations I've witnessed firsthand. A few years ago, a contractor posted about how he killed a house full of people by accident by causing a carbon monoxide leak in their home while working on the HVAC system. He wasn't caught. That guy who crawled into a tiny tunnel in a cave and died upside down when he got stuck. So disturbing to imagine, knowing that your last day on Earth was spent upside down, nearly losing consciousness with you and your very upset family contemplating how bad you ducked up. Haunted me for days. I'm going to post this in hopes someone remembers and can reference the post I'm referring to. This is one of the scariest things I've read and seen on Reddit, and I hope the op is okay. Have not seen Reddit updates, but if I remember correctly, it was a front page post. There was a woman who lived at home in an apartment building and would get random knocks on her door. There would be banging and screaming while she was inside alone. I think her husband was a doctor and had odd hours, and this only happened when he was away. She was able to take a really poor quality photo of him out her window, and you can see him facing and looking into her apartment. Redditors were suggesting he was doing this to essentially torture her, and warned that it might escalate to something much more dangerous. Obviously he was stalking her because he knew when she'd be alone. Ever since I read her post, I have been terrified to answer the door. I think about her constantly and really hope she okay. If anyone remembers this post, please share. You can find some ducked up sheet on Reddit 50/50. I came across a child holding his dead dad crying in Africa. That one messed me up so bad. This was fairly recently, I think within the past 5 months. A woman posted on our legal advice that her husband had used the constraints attached to their bed to tie her down for some fun, started making love to her, and then went to answer the door when someone knocked. Long story short, he watched as a bunch of his friends took turns gang raping his wife while telling her how much he loved her for letting him do this. He had her gagged with a sock before going to answer the door, so she couldn't respond or scream. She received a lot of great advice on what steps to take. She was posting while locked in the bathroom after all the friends left. Her last update on the original post was that the police had come and arrested the husband and were taking her to the hospital. I think about her almost every day, hoping she's okay and that she's safely away from that creep of a husband. I can't find the post now, and I'm guessing it was removed on the advice of her lawyer. I also haven't seen any update. There's a part of me, though, that hopes it was taken down because it was all a lie and there wasn't really a husband who would do something so atrocious to his wife, all while pretending he loved her. I don't remember what sub it was on, but it was before I really used Reddit. A friend sent me a link and it was a bunch of things the cartels had done. Burned bodies, skinned skulls, decapitated bodies. I hate to admit how long I looked at it. Carl H teaches programming. Redditor dedicates a huge amount of time creating and maintaining a subreddit to teach people programming. He's articulate, super nice, positive. Only he wasn't. He was a piece of shit who was raping his kid with his partner on the regular. He killed himself in prison. I hope his kid is doing okay. Pretty NSFW. So fair warning. Back when Watch PRPD was still online, someone posted a video of a guy who'd attempted to kill himself with a shotgun to the head and failed. Let's just say that video is still burned into my brain. I think it was on Reddit, but this woman was diagnosed with a disease and her posts showed her slow descent into madness. Chilling stuff. Found an account that had been posting pictures of underage girls ripped off of Instagram. Every single girl he posted was in my high school. All the rape, stalking, and other posts on here are bad. But the one that always turns my stomach is the guy who had a body part amputated for a legitimate medical reason, and then took the appendage home and made tacos out of it. The guy who shot his penis off with a revolver. There was a story I read a few years back about a guy that found an entrance to the base of a bridge under a highway. It was great and really engrossed me while I was reading it. Anyone remember? Not sure if this was from Reddit, but it's a story that always got me. The girl tells how she was walking home one day, and when she gets home she sees her mom coming out of the front door and her mom looks past her and says, "Who the hell are you?" And the narrator says how she turned around and saw a man turning away and walking back down the street. Her mom had come home sick from work, and if she hadn't been there then who knew what would have happened. That always gets me. For me it's usually the real life, everyday seeming people who do awful things, but are so far out of touch with reality that they think they're normal. One being that dude who literally stalked that in reporter woman. He made constant posts in like legal advice or something asking if he could sue her to unblock him. When people, rightly, brought up that he was a nutbar and belonged in jail or counseling, he repeatedly defended himself by saying they were in love and if she could just meet him she would see, etc. Like all the classic stalker reasoning. He absolutely refused to see anyone else's logic and was clearly mentally ill, but not willing or able to see how badly he needed help, and this poor woman was caught in the middle of it for no real reason other than he saw some articles she had read. The other one was the legal advice post from the dude who basically trapped and assaulted a girl in his home and was asking how he could get out of the charges she was pressing against him. Only, he told the story the way a sociopath trying to get sympathy would, but the glimmers of what really happened were easily recognizable in the post. She came in, he locked the door, and she was nervously on her phone. He made a move, she said no, he took her phone away. He then made a move again and eventually she relented. Then he went to take a shower, and when he got back he found that she had bolted out the door and gone to police, and he couldn't figure out why. And in his words, it was a dating ad, so why would she respond to a dating ad and come to my house if she didn't mean it? Classic no equals yes defense. There are some nasty people on this website. If it's an obvious throwaway or whatever, it's easy to justify some of them as trolls. It's the ones who you can tell are actual deluded people that are willingly breaking the law but think they're right that are really scary, because it's entirely possible that person is your coworker or a friend of a friend, etc. I saw a post about a guy that said his daughter found human remains and money in their barn. And when he set up cameras, 2 people were standing in his yard for a couple of hours every night. They were in a safe house, some motel, and there was a super loud knock on the door in the middle of the night and no one was outside. I'll look for an update. The Tumblr of that cutter goth girl who cut herself like down to the bone. Stitched herself up regularly. Huge scars. Really gruesome and unsettling.